The thoughts, opinions, and general overall shade thrown on High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers and not those of High at 9 News, its audience, or its advertisers. The statements made do not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice, and for advice tailored to your specific situation, please consult with a licensed professional. Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck and Rico Lamitte, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us. Yeah. Good morning, everybody. That's right. It is Friday, March 15th, and today is, that's right, Rico, you guessed it. Today is National Kansas Day. Little Toto, little tornadoes. Yeah, that's right.
Shout out to the Phelps family, the Phelpses.
Oh, boy, all the Phelps. Everything You Think Is Wrong Day is also today.
You got that right.
Yep. It's right up your alley. That's what I'm saying. National Pears and Helene Day. And National Shoe the World Day. That's right. Shoe the World. Shoes for all the kids across the world. That's right.
Can't get a better place.
Thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. There's also high noon on the East Coast. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms. You can look down below on your screen to see exactly where we live on the internet. And we are live every Monday through Friday on YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and on our very own website at www.highat9news.com. So welcome to everyone joining us from any one of those platforms. And we are going to kick it off with, that's right, with the dope dad himself, Mr. Rico Lamitte, the man who all of a sudden had an orange hat on yesterday, and now he's rocking an orange beanie. Oh, man, I'm seeing some trends going on. That's right.
I thought it was going to be a green screen.
Yeah. He's working on, he's getting you green screen. Just relax. He's framing you up, bro. Just relax, okay? I told you got to be patient today. Just a little bit of patience. Just a little bit of patience. I know it must be that orange you have rocking today. Man, that's right. It is the dope dad himself, Mr. Rico Lamitte. See, I told you there was no applause today.
Oh, there we go.
Told you.
There we go.
Told you.
Got a little green haze around me. Maybe I need to turn my lights up here. You know what I'm saying?
You probably do. That orange is coming through strong, though.
Strong. All right. All right, Jason. Big shout out first to everybody I got to link with at Hall of Flowers out in Ventura. It was a good week, and hopefully everybody got some good business done this week. That's what it's all about. We got to move this industry forward and do it on a positive thing. So, speaking of positivity, as the 2024 presidential gaslight tour continues, we've got some highlights from last night's Biden show at his campaign HQ in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Marijuana Moments' Kyle Yeager reported that President Joe Biden delivered a speech yesterday where he made brief remarks in front of supporters holding signs reading, "We're on board," that included different reasons why they back his re-election bid. Now, judging that this is at his Milwaukee campaign HQ, obviously this is probably a scripted thing that went down. For this Kabuki theater is just getting out of control. I'll tell y'all what. So according to a White House poll report, around 4:20 local time, the president recognized one person with a sign that said he's on board because he agrees that no one should be jailed for using or possessing marijuana. Joe Biden replied, "I'm taking care of that." Now, I'm super skeptic about the facts surrounding this whole story because I've been looking all morning for the actual live video posted on IG, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and I couldn't find it at all. If anybody has a video, this whole thing going down yesterday, please send it out. Um, Maybe you had better luck, but I did find the official transcript from New York Times Reed Epstein for his travel pool report outlining the full account of what went down. Here's what it says. Travel report number 6, campaign HQ stop. POTUS emerged at his Wisconsin campaign headquarters at 4:17 p.m. Upon entering the room, POTUS made a face similar to the one he made at Marjorie Taylor Greene at the State of the Union last week. The room had 8 tables at which people sat, along with a few dozen others who stood. There were signs around with campaign post State of the Union slogan, "We're on board," attached to the walls. At the tables, Biden supporters have written on their own signs reasons as to why they're on board with POTUS. He was introduced by Jaliyah Jefferson, coordinated campaign deputy organizing director for Milwaukee, and he began his remarks at exactly 4:19 p.m. He told the assembled supporters that his campaign will require knocking on doors and making contact with people. He approached a boy who appeared to be about 10 years old and said, "This is going to be the next president one of these days." He asked the young man to remember him when he is president. He thanked the crowd for supporting him when he ran against Donald Trump in the last campaign. And a lot of you helped me in 2020 to make sure he is a loser, and we're going to make sure we do it again, he said. POTUS saw one man who was wearing a Milwaukee Brewers hat and holding a sign that said he's on board with the Biden campaign because no one should be jailed for using or possessing marijuana. He stopped for a second and he said, "I'm taking care of that." Melodrama. Fucking terrible. I need to see this video, man. At 4:26 p.m., the pool was ushered out of the campaign headquarters while POTUS remained inside. "We are holding in the vans, awaiting the next movement. It is beginning to rain in Milwaukee. The pool can hear but not see people shouting something. They're too far away to be understood, but you see smoke coming up outside." We all know the statement he made was half cap. Pardons are not expungements, period. But the tweet that the Biden campaign made last week, his campaign sent out echoing his words that became his most popular tweet ever. And it seems that going forward, Biden just might be making this a campaign pillar. So as Kyle Yeager pointed out, the fact that Biden singled out the supporter with marijuana seems that it is the latest example of how the administration is recognizing the popularity of cannabis reform ahead of the November elections. And Vice President Kamala Harris is set to meet with cannabis pardon recipients at the White House today to discuss their experiences under the president's clemency proclamations. Now, that's the shit I want to see. That Fat Joe interview, I don't know, whatever. But I want to see what these guys are talking about. They actually got pardoned. Did they get released from jail? I don't know. Let's see if Joe Biden's actually got something to this. Either way, what y'all think? Is it really happening? Do we finally have a pro-cannabis candidate on our hands with Joe Biden? And will Jason Beck stick to his word that he will be supporting anybody on either side of the aisle who's willing to move cannabis reform forward, even if it's Sleepy Joe? I'm Rico Lamitte, the dopest dad on the street for High 9 News. Let's talk about it.
First of all, we're not talking about descheduling cannabis. He's talking about moving it to 3, so that's not progress. That's actually steps backwards, Rico. That's backpedaling. You should be an expert in that.
What if it is? What if it is not? What if it is not? What if he actually
show me one lick?
What if?
Show me one lick of proof.
If he said he wants to deschedule it, are you going to support President Biden?
I would support him in that 100%.
So. Right, so y'all
in that effort, I didn't say I would vote for him. I didn't say I would vote for him, but I said that I would support him in that 100% if he was moving to deschedule. There's a big difference. You know what I mean?
Beck is on board. Whatever that campaign slogan is, I'm on board.
Exactly. This is just like straight gaslighting, this whole thing. You're saying you can't find a video. So we don't even know if this actually happened. This could be just like total fake news.
It could be.
It could be. I mean, the reason why I say this is because the administration did the same thing with that kid in where was it? I think it was in Georgia. if I'm not mistaken, that committed suicide. They tried saying that they were bullied or whatnot, and this and this and that, when they were actually the aggressor in the fight previously, prior to them going and committing suicide on the following day. And so,
I don't know what you're talking about, but
Biden was trying to gaslight the world, saying certain things about this one individual, how it was such a travesty and whatnot, and this and that, when trying to paint this person as the victim, when this person was the aggressor, and then they later killed themselves, and he was trying to blame it on, it's just more gaslighting.
When it comes to cannabis reform, though, I mean, I just want to see you saying that you're on board with Joe Biden.
if Joe Biden was going to deschedule cannabis and is out there campaigning to deschedule cannabis, I could get behind that.
What if he outright legalizes it, and then we have
there's no such thing as outright legalization. That's a fairy tale. That's this mis language that people common use. There's no such thing as just blanket legalization.
I don't know, just sounding a lot like Joe Biden's pro-cannabis all of a sudden. I don't know. What do the doctors think?
I think that's probably a short circuit in the drone that they're using for him to talk with.
What do y'all think, Dr. T, Dr. Mark? What are your thoughts on this?
I think this could be the issue to bring Jason over from the dark side.
What do you mean? His name is Dark Brandon.
Yes, Dark Brandon.
What do you?
Wow, this is just all lip service, isn't it? I mean,
it
we've
is.
heard this before.
Here's the worst part, though, Dr. Marcus. Since we don't have a video, we can't believe that it's actually lip service. We just believe that this is press service. They're just creating this narrative of something that never actually happened.
I just find it hard to believe that nobody had a cell phone in there.
Someone had one. Someone definitely had one. Oh well, maybe there was actually no one there. I mean, it was a thing for Biden.
Biden got people showing up, man.
Biden does not have people showing up, bro. Those are all people those are all the paid people that are paid to be there. It's not people that are there on their own free will. Mm-hmm.
At least he pays people.
Exactly, and those people would all have their phones. All those staffers would all have their phones, so there should be some video somewhere of this.
Mm-hmm. Well, we all know that politics is perception, right?
That's right.
So that's
so is reality. So is reality, Dr. T.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Different. But what we're trying to find out is how far can we push Biden? He's taking a stance that he's pro-cannabis, and he's trying to get elected based on this stance. And what we're doing is we need to push back and say, how pro-cannabis are you really?
Mm-hmm.
Are you really making effective changes? I think if we do that before the election, he might push the Department of Justice to deschedule or reschedule. I think that might happen as long as we don't buy these I've already done everything I can for cannabis statements, and we say, well, you need to do more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's just placating. He's not going to do anything. He's just gaslighting.
I think he is.
You guys.
I think he is going to do something. Yeah, I agree with Rico. Yeah, I think he will. I think we're going to push back, and I think before November, he's going to do something.
Before November.
It's gonna be the knockout. It's gonna be the knockout punch, man.
Yeah.
It's gonna be the knockout.
Yeah,
punch.
he's gonna move it to Schedule 3 and screw everybody over, and everyone's gonna be cheering, thinking that we made progress when really we took 3 steps backwards.
Well, and to be honest, his position has always been quite uninformed.
Mm-hmm.
He's a drug warrior, right?
Yep.
Who's got his hands tarred with being a drug warrior, and going into his first campaign, to tell you how uninformed he is, he supported medical and supported states' rights and everything, but again wants to see this thing rescheduled, and
mm-hmm.
rescheduled is not consistent with where the industry is today, and I just think that rescheduling a medicinal herb that you can grow yourself to Schedule 3 is just a losing
mm-hmm.
position to be in.
It is,
right? The trap is going to win, right, Jason?
The trap is going to crush. The trap can't wait for Schedule 3. The trap is so cheering for Schedule 3. Yeah.
You're talking about the no labels party. We're talking about the white label party.
Exactly. You're right about that.
Right.
The white label party.
I mean, could they somehow carve out an exception to the way that Schedule 3?
That would be so difficult for them to do, Dr. Mark, because they would have to reframe the whole framework for how the FDA operates in order to do that.
But the manufacturing and dispensing of Schedule 3 drugs has to happen at FDA registered facilities,
Exactly.
none of which would be easily transferred over to the cannabis industry.
There's only maybe like 10 or 20 facilities countrywide, I think, that would be able to easily transition into this phase, only because they were already built out with certain certifications in mind when they were actually constructed.
For manufacturing, you're referring to?
Correct.
Yeah. Well, dispensing is a whole different ballgame, right?
Dispensing is a whole nother ballgame. You're right, but at the same time, like, you have to be able to manufacture a product if you want to be able to dispense it. So you can't, you know what I mean? You got to be able to have that manufacturing in place first.
Right. So as it exists today, say in California, there's manufacturing, there's distribution licenses, and there's dispensing licenses. Isn't that the full chain of production, right? So you go from production.
There's cultivation, there's manufacturing, and then there's distribution.
Right. So does President Biden and the people who hold this idea that, rescheduling the 3 is somehow going to be okay?
I don't think they've thought that far through. I don't think they've thought that far through this whole process.
Yeah, it's like the Farm Bill. They don't think any of this shit through, right?
Yeah, they haven't.
They just look for the political immediate gratification that brings.
Exactly.
And they don't fully think things out. So, yeah, I mean, I guess this doesn't surprise us, does it?
And then it's going to be so hard to get anything fixed after they screw this thing up to Schedule 3, because there's not going to be enough political gumption or political gunpowder enough to really get anything done anymore, because people are going to say, oh, yeah, we dealt with that. It's done. Da-da-da-da-da. It's a mute issue, bro. We keep on moving on. You know what I mean? We have other problems in the world.
The creative minds in this industry will find the loopholes, and now they'll be busy closing other loopholes, right?
The only loopholes they're going to be closing.
Think these things through, they're going to create opportunities to basically skirt the regulation and go around it.
That's what I'm saying.
And like you were talking the other day about native, laws and being sovereign nations. How do they?
They're exempt. They're exempt from this. As long as they're on their tribal land.
So I can go by non-Schedule 3 over at the reservation.
Yep.
Right?
Maybe it's going to be time to partner up with a reservation. Maybe that's the solution around Schedule 3. Partner up with a reservation. I mean, oh man, it's so screwed. People are going to get so screwed and so washed.
If you partner up with a reservation, Jason, go down to North Carolina where you got that application out for deputy, and might not be the best idea to do. Might not be the best path forward. I don't know.
Oh no. If I was the deputy there, we would work with our native brothers and sisters out there, and we would come up with a tribal pack. We'd come up with a tribal pack.
Changing your tune.
Yeah.
But Rico, like you guys said, as soon as you're off the reservation and you're on Department of Transportation roads, you're fucked, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So unless you live on the reservation, right?
Yeah.
Or unless the reservation laws apply to people who buy on the reservation and then take off.
Yeah, they're trying to shut down North Carolinians, the outside the reservation North Carolinians. They're trying to shut down their access to medical cards that they're given.
Yeah.
The problem is the Controlled Substances Act. It's not cannabis. You're playing a faulty game when you're dealing with the control. If you have issues with certain substances, it's a public health issue. It's not an enforcement issue. And so you can put everything in under the Department of Justice is a problem. It's a huge problem.
Yep.
When we have politicians echoing what Dr. Talleyrand is saying right here, that's when it's no longer lip service, right?
Exactly.
So this is what needs to be fundamentally addressed, is removing cannabis from the Controlled Dangerous Substance Act. Look, it's not dangerous. It doesn't need to be controlled. Plain and simple. right?
Remove the Controlled Substances Act is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The whole act.
Oh, remove that act altogether.
Remove it. I'm with you. Yeah.
But this goes again to the story that you guys were covering the other day on the DEA. The DEA is not going to defund themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they shouldn't have a say in that decision, right? Because they got their hands in the money pot, and they're not going to say, well, you know what, we're going to remove that from the schedule, and we're just going to basically do away with the Controlled Dangerous Substance Act altogether. They won't have jobs, right?
Mm-hmm. Very true.
They exist because of that act.
Mm-hmm. Very, very true. And on that, we got to go to a commercial. Were you going to say something, Dr. T?
No, I'm all good.
Okay, all right. We're going to go to a commercial. We're going to be right back.
Oh, man, that was weird. Hey, you America. Do I look like Sean Connery? Good morning, America. Saman Razani coming to you live from sunny Los Angeles, California with the one and only highest host, Mr. Jason Beck, smoking on the best weed in the world. Did you know that we have an audio-only version of our podcast? You can find it on Apple, Google, Amazon, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. No excuses in 2024. If you haven't checked us out, check it out now. And also, check out what the Prophet's doing in 2024.
Oh yeah! Up next, y'all know who it is. The head honcho here at High at 9 News, known for smoking the best weed in the world, but also the highest white label representative in every room now that he might be shifting away from the Republican Party because President Joe Biden is pro-cannabis.
That is not reality at all.
What do you have for us, Deputy Beck?
That is not reality, bro. You are promoting fake news, bro. That is not the business right there. But let me tell you something. Oh, man. Alabama Cannabis Commission stands behind the process as a court date looms, you guys. That's right. The Alabama Medical Cannabis Commission stood firm on Thursday, which was yesterday, in its commitment to the 20 companies it awarded licenses to in December for the right to grow and sell medical marijuana, unanimously voting against a self-imposed pause on the issuance of licenses during a meeting in Montgomery. The use of medical marijuana products in Alabama was first legalized in 2021 through a bill that established the AMCC, which in June of last year awarded licenses to grow and sell medical marijuana to 21 companies. While medical marijuana products were initially anticipated to become available as soon as late of 2023, but errors in the commission's license selection process and then a flurry of lawsuits in companies that had not been selected. And now a timeline for the rollout of products is still uncertain as lawsuits against the AMCC continue to be litigated in court. Most recently, the AMCC's legal team had asked a Montgomery County Circuit Court judge this week to dismiss all cases against the commission. Judge James Anderson set a deadline of April 1st for the plaintiffs to file their own motions in response. And ahead of this impeding court date, the AMCC held its own meeting to discuss several items, two of which would be to impose a stay on the issuance of licenses in two categories: dispensaries and integrated facilities. The later being the most sought after and contested of the licenses. Lori Skelton, commissioner member and healthcare lawyer, argued that enacting a self-imposed pause on issuing licenses could send the wrong message, not only to Alabamans, but to companies it had most recently awarded licenses. In quotes, in December, the commission made a public declaration of our intent to send a message that would not impose a stay and a message that we didn't do anything wrong, Skelton said. Skelton was referring to how the commission had issued self-imposed stays in the past after its first two attempts to award licenses, stays that were imposed to address transparency and scoring issue concerns in the award process. Its third and latest award of licenses, Skelton argued, were not made with with any apparent flaws in the process and should be supported. In quotes, when the court has already got us under a temporary restraining order, it seems counterproductive for us to use our own, she continued. At the same time, we were in court on Monday objecting to a TRO. Pharmacist and commission member Sam Blackenmore echoed Skelton's statements and argued that the commission should stand behind its decision made in December. In quotes, I don't want to signal that we think we did something wrong in December. Previously, when we did stays, we were essentially telling the public that we were going to redo the licenses, Blackenmore said. In quotes, I just want it on record that the state of candidates that we had in December, I really appreciate those guys. I think they'll do a good job. Commissioner Chair Rex Vaughn agreed, and the AMCC ultimately voted unanimously to table the proposal to pause the issuance of licenses. Following the meeting, Blackenmore told Alabama Daily News that beyond not waiting to delay the rollout of medical marijuana any further, he wanted to communicate to the 20 companies that had been awarded licenses in December that the commission still held confidence in its decision. In quotes, I don't want to lose those guys because those guys that we're going to need to make this medicine, Blackenmore told ADN. And plaintiffs in the ongoing cases against the AMCC will have until April 1st to respond to the commission's motion to dismiss the lawsuits, and the AMCC will then have until April 15th to respond to the plaintiff's response. Vaughn has previously estimated that products could become available to patients roughly 3 months after licenses are actually issued, and factoring in that time would take for companies to grow, produce, and cultivate medical marijuana, you guys. Well. Seems like these guys are doubling down hard on their Alabama license issuance, and I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this. This is Jason Beck for the High at 9 News. What do you gonna say, Rico? I know you got something to say about this. You don't want to smoke no Bammer weed? I bet.
No Bammer weed.
No Bama weed. I see what it's really cute, Rico. Very, very cute. Would you say that you put 250 on it instead of 5 on it? Since it's Bama weed.
Tree fitty.
Tree fitty. I mean, doesn't this just reek of corruption? Just of how these guys are making these comments, like, hey, you know what? We're confident in our original 20. We're going to stay riding with them regardless of any of this other stuff that you guys are talking about, and we're not going to deviate from our messaging because we feel that it would deviate from our process that we already concluded.
Yeah. It seems very, very skewed. But that's politics, and is a lot more visible. The leanings towards one side or the other are a lot more visible in Southern politics. Keep it at that.
What? Any of the doctors? Do you guys have any thoughts on this? Alabama? No. All right.
You're muted, Dr. T.
There we go.
Is Alabama overtaxing their products like everyone else?
Alabama doesn't even have products on the market yet, so how could they be overtaxing them?
They don't have any laws about how they're going to tax everything.
I'm not sure exactly what their tax rate is. In all honesty, but they don't even have products even on the shelf yet. So I feel like that's kind of putting the cart before the horse in regards to this, because they're still saying before they even issue the licenses, it's still going to take 3 months even after that, and I'll argue it's going to take probably more like 6 to 9 months after that, because a lot of these places may possibly not be built out. You know what I mean? If they're just issuing licenses and whatnot, we don't know if they've allowed for different of these licensees to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in construction to build out these facilities either. So it could be a lot longer wait for Alabamans than that.
And they're saying a growth cycle is 3 months.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, it is like if from the time from when you plant a crop to when you harvest it, I think 3 months is a fair thing for regulators to go by.
Can we just point out the problem with this in California, because it takes longer to grow a good sativa.
Yeah, but that most people don't grow those anymore because they're not cost productive because of the cost of square footage and all the fees and whatnot. It just doesn't make sense for the real estate to have crops that take that long when you could end up having an extra 1 to 2 cycles per year by not growing those strains.
I understand, but some patients prefer sativas.
I get it, but they're not going to pay that extra marked up value for it that it would cost the producer to actually produce that in lost revenue if they were producing something else.
Yeah, so I think that's the biggest problem, though. It's not about the money; it's about the patients, the customer,
the custies.
And
Shout
we
out to
know
the custies.
Blue Dream is winning, right?
That is true. That's true. It is a mids market.
Blue Dream is winning. Jason doesn't like having blue dreams. It's turning his shirts purple.
Oh.
You know what I'm saying?
You guys are cute.
Isn't Alabama one of these low THC oil regulations too? Everything gets turned into tincture.
Yeah, I do think that they're only allowing for manufactured products. I do think that is okay. Correct. But
so right away that program is dead on arrival because Alabama is in the middle of Delta 8 country where you can get Delta 8 pens and Delta 8 gummies and all buy that at the gas station or on the internet. So really, do they really think a low THC oil? I was on an application.
Let's not assume it may not be a low THC oil. Let's just assume that is just.
I think it is. Yeah. I think it is. I think it's a low THC. So it's like I remember, working on the application for Alabama, and we were talking about terpenes and the entourage effect, and talking about how great cannabis is. When we're basically going to turn all of the cannabis plants into vanilla distillate, which is just a low grade. Input that you can get. So it's painful to write an application knowing that the state regulation basically prohibits the most valuable products that could be made from cannabis, and we got to dumb them down to some stupid fucking potency level just because, what about the children kind of bullshit, right? I think Alabama's one of those states, so that program's dead on arrival.
Not those 20 people, they're going to get them licenses.
So it looks like nobody's going to be smoking that Bammer weed.
Oh, that Bama weed.
There's going to be a handful of epileptic patients that are going to be helped, and certainly a small fraction of severe medical cases who will now have access to cannabis oil, but it will, it won't stomp out the trap in Alabama. No way.
They're gonna come out with a brand that's like a knockout tincture brand that's called the Alabama Slammer. Knock your ass out.
Alabama Phi Slamma Jamma. I like that.
Exactly.
Have Clyde Drexler and Hakeem Olajuwon.
Oh, boy. Oh, man. We're going to keep this thing rolling right on into Dr. Gene Talleyrand. He's the founder of the CESC, and he probably even wrote your parents' recommendation through, that's right, none other than Medican itself. That's right. He's the founder of Medican as well, and he's here with us today. It is none other than Dr. Gene Talleyrand.
Thank you, Jason. Happy Friday, everyone. So my story today is from Normal, cannabis therapy associated with quality of life improvements in chronically ill patients. A recent survey captured 1,582 reported outcomes from patients using medical cannabis in Germany. The authors used a matrix of symptoms to track quality of life. Patients reported on chronic pain, sleep disturbances, stress, tension, inner restlessness, depressive mood, muscle tension, and others. 84% of those surveyed reported improvements following the use of cannabis. Cannabis therapy may improve the quality of life of patients regardless of the disease, the study authors concluded. These findings are consistent with other observational studies from Australia and United Kingdom. Traditional studies try to identify a diagnosis and seek to demonstrate changes in the diagnosis. The process is reductionist. Patients with multiple symptoms are often excluded from studies. The idea is to identify one compound that improves one diagnosis. This magic bullet approach is ideal for patents and profits. However, people are not that simple. Assessing a matrix of symptoms plays a special role in cannabis-related therapy. Multiple active ingredients and multiple molecular targets create a broad range of effects that are typically associated with cannabis. Although this approach may be difficult to patent, it addresses the real-world experience of patients. In that light, a matrix of quality of life measurements should be the standard for all therapeutic approaches. As well, assessing a symptom matrix could contribute to the identification of multiple diseases and the better treatment monitoring. Cannabis was legalized by prescription use in Germany in 2017. However, cannabis products were typically only authorized when patients were unresponsive to traditional therapies. Beginning April 1st, 2024, the personal possession of cannabis will be legal for adults over 18. The German parliament also voted to declassify cannabis as a narcotic, ease prescription requirements, and make patient access easier. Now in Germany, it will be legal to possess 25 grams of cannabis in public and 50 grams in private, and have up to 3 cannabis plants at home. Nonprofit cannabis social clubs are also due to be legalized on July 1st, 2024. However, direct sales will not be permitted. The market model reminds me of California's Prop 215 days, when patient collectives were intended to charge service fees rather than directly charge for the cannabis. It's now proven that 84% of chronically ill Germans will improve their quality of life using cannabis. The study may contradict the finding that 30% of cannabis users have a substance use disorder. Cannabis is different. It doesn't fit into traditional pharmaceutical models. It's a multi-agent product that generally improves quality of life rather than a single-agent product that targets one disease. It's easily grown in your backyard and can be shared with your neighbors. Along those lines, it doesn't easily fit into Babylon's market models. These new laws make Germany the largest federally legal recreational and medicinal nonprofit cannabis market in the world. I propose we follow suit in the US and revert back to the nonprofit model. What do you think? This is Dr. Jean Talleyrand with High at 9 News.
I agree with your last statement, Dr. T.
You want to go back to nonprofit?
Well, I mean, nonprofit was all profit back then.
Yes, it was.
You know, and so that's how I see it. Nonprofit was all profit back then. Now we're having to split all of our money with the government, and the government's taxing us at crazy, erroneous rates, and now there is no profit.
Nonprofit, you can write stuff off, right?
Only profit you can find is on store shelves if you're going to purchase the Profit brand. Just saying.
Shout out to Profit brand.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Good Flower coming out. Coming out of Northern California. Shout out to Luke Scarmazzo, Mandy Tingler. Shout out Profit. Shout out.
And shout out to Ali Muffins over here, Mr. Pharmacist, saying that this is his American profile. This pharmacist who gave us a super chat, saying, "Oh man, you guys, where did it go?" That's right, the Women's Canno Awards. There's a discount code of capital W Woman Rule 30. Capital W Woman Rule 30. Is the discount code for your
discount
tickets.
Code.
Yes, your discount code for the Women's Cannabis Awards getting held here in LA, March 30th.
Yeah, support the women. Support the women in cannabis. Come out, see some great people. There's I think there's 60 brands, 50 retailers going to be there and representing. And yours truly will be there with my better half, celebrating my women in my life.
Amazing.
Do the same.
So
do the same.
Dr. T, back on your story, Dr. T. I have a question in regards to this. I mean, a lot of this is basically just confirming a lot of anecdotal evidence that we as cannabis consumers have known for years, that we have a higher quality of life than everybody.
Yeah, but the opposition keeps trying to prove that we don't. 30% of us are addicted, and addiction as measured is problematic. The use is problematic rather than improving your quality of life. So that's some of the propaganda that's being proposed in other places. But yeah, Germany's doing it the right way here. and just pointing to the obvious. 84% of people who are using cannabis with chronic illness have a better life.
Of course they were. Of course the cannabis improved their life. It like gave them something else to think about instead of having to focus on all that pain they're constantly just getting slammed with every time, every move, every whatever, every motion. Dr. Mark, you have any thoughts on this, Dr. Mark?
Well, some people claim, especially older folks, that they don't want to feel the paranoia that often is associated with a cannabis high. But I'll contend that the thing that makes people paranoid are the laws.
Mm-hmm.
It's the laws that make people, maybe
That's a great
think
point.
underneath their thinking is that I'm breaking the law. I'm going to get in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of like, again, part of the reason why I think we live with this stigma is that we're all kind of outlaws in the eyes of the government. And I guess doctors like Jean who, prescribe cannabis are kind of out of the norm of, doctors that are drones of the pharmaceutical industry that basically just carry out the delivery of FDA approved drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I've said it before on High at 9, I think if, cannabis is not a drug, it's a medicinal herb. And whenever a medicinal herb can provide relief to some kind of medical condition or illness, I think doctors ought to have that as an option before prescribing FDA approved drugs. Right? Because that, you can probably give them an FDA approved drug, but why not try cannabis first? Because most likely cannabis isn't going to create an addict and it's not going to kill them.
Mm-hmm.
But, we've had this discussion with Dr. Talleyrand before. I mean, what does the rest of the medical community really need to see in terms of efficacy and safety data? So that doctor that's about to write a prescription for an FDA approved drug, he says, you know what? Maybe you should go to your local dispensary and get a sativa or get, give him a recommendation around using cannabis. I don't know, Jean, what do you think? I mean, what do doctors really need to see to get them to maybe not prescribe an opiate, but to say, hey, try a cannabis concentrate or a cannabis?
Well, we're trained for single agent treatment, right? We're trained. They would need to be retrained. It's a long road. They would need to understand how to advise on plant use. And by the way, for those who are getting paranoid with cannabis, it's usually because you're using the wrong product at the wrong dosage. It's just misusing. You can have adverse effects with any product if you misuse it. So, switch what you're doing. Put more CBD in what you're using.
Fair enough. And on that, we're going to go to a commercial, and we are going to be right back because Dr. T, we're going to have more on these topics coming up in a future story today. The Control Tower from Highly Educated has perfected the dab. Utilizing the concept of thin film evaporation, you can waste none of it and taste all of it. The micro texture of the SE pillar increases nucleation at elevated temperatures. And with the tower propelling at 2,600 RPMs, it's certainly the most efficient dab experience to date. The Control Tower from Highly Educated. You with us, Rico?
Yeah, I mean, you usually have
oh shit! It's fucking dad damn it, son of a bitch! Oh, stop whatever you're doing. Make sure you hit that like button. I know you'll appreciate it. We'll appreciate it, and YouTube will appreciate it. Also, make sure that you subscribe to the channel if you've not subscribed already. And all of the articles that we cover on today's show, you can read directly on our website at www.highat9news.com. And on May 3rd, get your tickets now. Head over to our website at cloudmedia.partners. That's www.cloudmedia.partners. And make sure you purchase your tickets for the Shit Show, a comedy show that we're going to be doing over here May 3rd here in Los Angeles. We will see you soon.
I'm Jason Beck, and this is Smoky Vanilla. And if you want to feel as good as I look, then you need to get yourself a stretch and smoke with Smoky Vanilla.
That's right, baby. I'm Smoky Vanilla with my background in kinesiology. I'm a sports massage therapist and stretch coach. I focus mostly on athletes who have chronic pain or injury due to their sport, or the legends of the chronic in the game, baby.
Oh, yeah, you know what it is. We just stretched, and now we're gonna smoke, because you know what it is.
That's right. I love intuitively creating a session based on the individual I'm working with. We'll go through a few assessments, look at the past health history, injury, or anything that's still affecting you today, and create a customized session just for you. Let's go.
That's right. Our next correspondent is a New England-based expert in organic and natural product chemistry, plant oil extraction, and boof eradication. Here to break us down with a little Friday science, y'all know who it is, Dr. Mark Scialdone.
Thank you, Rico. Happy Friday, everyone. Hope you guys are having a good week.
Happy Friday,
You
Doc.
got some great plans for the weekend. So my story today, I could talk about Delta 8 and talk about regulations, but you know what? I always look for a science article so I could break down some science on Friday for y'all. And I found one this week. And so my article today comes from the Journal of Cannabis Research, and it's entitled Evaluation of Dispensaries Cannabis Flower for Accuracy of Labeling of Cannabinoids Content. And this comes from Mahmoud El Soli's group. For those of you who don't know Mahmoud El Soli, he is a professor of cannabis chemistry down at Ole Miss and runs the NIDA-funded Schwag Farm down at Ole Miss. So these folks have been doing cannabis chemistry with a federal license for years. And so what they've done now is they're testing some samples that they got at dispensaries. And so the abstract reads, cannabis policies have changed drastically over the last few years, with many states enhancing medical cannabis laws and some authorizing recreational use, all against federal laws. As a result, cannabis products are marketed in dispensaries in different forms, most abundantly as flowers intended for smoking and sometimes vaping. All samples in this study were obtained directly from law enforcement. The sample collection process was facilitated and funded by the National Marijuana Initiative, part of the High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area Program. This initial report focuses on cannabis flowers. Similar methods with other cannabis projects will be the subject of future reports. So it sounds like, from that background, that the way these samples were obtained was all through busts. So however these samples were obtained, they were obtained through law enforcement measures. So a total of 107 Delta 9 cannabis flower samples were collected by law enforcement. You got to wonder what the conditions of that collection was, right? From adult commercial use cannabis dispensaries located in 3 different states, Colorado, Oregon, and California, and analyzed for study for cannabinoid concentrations. Samples were analyzed using GCFID following our previously published procedure. Okay, so GCFID stands for gas chromatography flame ionization detection. So the way that this works is they'll take some cannabis flower and they have to weigh it. So this is part of the issue, is that state regulations have to report cannabis based on dried weight. That's what you'll see when you see those cannabis percentages there. Those be reported on dried weight. Well, there is no cannabis in dispensaries that's completely dried, right? So there's moisture content that's associated. When cannabis is first harvested, it could have as much as 80% by weight water. So there's a lot of water in a living plant. But as it dries and the water content goes down, your stems will start to snap at around 14% by weight water. Ideally, you want to be somewhere around 11 or 10% by weight water, right? Think about it now. So if you have to report percentages of cannabinoids based on dry weight flower, that's bone dry, that's 0 water. So the lab is basically forced to dry that sample, right? And when they dry that sample to determine what the weight of the flower is minus the water, they basically do what's called a water activity measurement. And the water activity measurement can be extrapolated to something called an isotherm for cannabis. And basically the isotherm defines the relationship between the water activity number and the percent water in a sample. And the reason why this is important is because all of the variation here, I'm convinced scientifically, is based on the moisture content in the samples. So if you think about it, remember, they take that sample, they have to weigh it out to 4 decimal points to get the level of precision and accuracy that's required. And then what they're going to do is they're going to add a known amount of solvent to extract the cannabinoids from that flower sample. Well, that extraction has to be complete and quantitative. So not all labs are complete and quantitative in their flower extraction. So if you leave some of the material back on the sample of the flower itself, right, that's not going to go into solution and it's not going to go into your machine. So when they add the solvent to the flower sample, now what they're going to do is they're going to filter away the flower, right, filter away the plant material. And what you're left there with is a solution of cannabinoids. Now, you know how much you weighed out the flower sample, so you can determine how much flower gave the amount of cannabinoids in solution. And then what they do is they inject that onto, in this case, they're using something called a gas chromatograph. So I think I've described this before on High at 9 News, the way chromatography works. I think previously I talked about what's called HPLC, which is high performance liquid chromatography. That separates the cannabinoids based on their different polarities, running it through a filtration medium. The way GC works, so the way that this test worked, is it separates based on different boiling points. And so the most volatile compounds, which have the lowest boiling points, will make it through the column first. And then on the end of that column, they have what's called this flame ionization detector. So as compounds come off the column, the flame ionization detector basically uses a piezoelectric kind of flame to basically burn anything that's coming off the column. And when something comes off the column, it burns, right, and makes a little fire. Well, that fire creates a signal that can be measured by a detector. So as long as it's just helium coming off, there's nothing burning. But as soon as a peak comes off, now something's going to register on the detector. So this is important because in order to calibrate these machines properly, they have to buy standards of all of the pure cannabinoids, make a serial dilution. So they buy a cannabinoid solution of like 1 mg per mil, and then they do 10-fold dilutions of that to make a series of solutions that they inject onto the column. And then what happens is the more material you have coming off the column, the larger the peak, the more intense the signal. The less material you have coming off, the less intense the signal. So you get a relationship of the signal intensity versus concentration, and that's what you call a calibration curve. So that's how these instruments are calibrated. So now that you've calibrated it to measure delta 9 THC, you know the relationship between the peak height and the concentration. So that's important because it's important to be able to look at this data in that context. So to cut to the chase here, to get to the conclusion, all of the flowers that were analyzed, and again, they analyzed flowers from 3 different states, and these aren't Johnny-come-latelys to the industry, right? California, Oregon, and Colorado. And all the flowers out of that 107 samples that they analyzed, all except 3 observed a lower THC than what was written on the label. And some of them way more than the 20% variance that's allowed by most state regulations. So the results of this study indicate that there is a significant need for more stringent regulations to ensure that product labeling is accurate, as over 70% of the products evaluated, 70% of that 107 samples, did not meet the plus or minus 20% acceptance criteria that's adopted by most state regulations. It's noted that of all samples were found to be mislabeled outside of the 20% variance. And it says here only 1 sample was actually greater than the label amount. But actually, if you look at that data, 3 samples from the Oregon samples that they analyzed were above the reported amount on the label, but those were the only 3, and 2 of them were only off by like 1 or 2%. But 1 was significant. 1 had a label of like 20-something%, but they measured 30-something%. So this measure is pretty accurate and pretty precise based on the data and based on their level of experience. So I would put a lot of credence into the data that they have actually observed in this paper. What they say here is that it is noted that all the samples except for 1, but actually it was 3, were underlabeled while all were overlabeled, meaning that the label had a larger number than what actually was in the jar. That might be because of the higher economic gain by stating higher Delta-9 content. Well, let's talk about that for a second. So that is, again, an artifact of the fact that we have prohibition. Now, distributors and dispensaries need some kind of metric. And, outside of being able to sample the material and maybe test it and bring it home and smoke it, I mean, they hang their hat on a THC number because ultimately it's a metric that if you're going to pay a certain amount of money for a certain wholesale transaction, you want to get the most potent material you can get. And that's just going to be a higher Delta-9 content. They said that the other possibility for the reason of overstated values is there could have been loss of THC content as a result of storage conditions. But you know what? I don't believe that. Some of these were pre-rolls. Certainly there is a drying out that happens. Can you really get a loss of THC potency? Well, if anything, if you lose your terpenes and you lose volatiles, what's going to happen to your THC content is on storage, it's actually going to go up. Now, if it's not stored properly, could it degrade to CBN? It could. But I don't think that they really observed too much CBN formation in this study. They basically just are showing that a lot of the THC content that were on the label for these samples that were selected were just not right. So I'll just finish by saying, they say, furthermore, several research groups as well as the FDA have conducted investigations into the accuracy of product labeling, and their findings are consistent with what they find here. So there's a lot of over-reporting of potencies. It's been in other papers. I don't think it's difficult to do pairwise comparisons of results from different labs because they're using different ways to get to that bone dry sample, right? And the way that they they're supposed to do it is you get to that bone dry sample, but that's not the sample that you do chromatography on. You do chromatography on a sample as received, but then use your water measurement on the bone dry sample to do some kind of correction calculation for what you're observing by GC or by HPLC. So because those methods are not consistent from lab to lab to lab, statistically, you can't make pairwise comparisons between the two because that's statistically problematic. So until we've talked about this many times before on High at 9 News, until we have standardized methods that are uniform across all testing labs, we can't make a comparison of one testing lab with another testing lab. And that's going to basically be endemic and provide these inaccurate labels and potentially health concerns regarding cannabinoid potency. So the last thing I'll just say is that, so this is a study that's out there in the open literature. Please post the link, Adam, if you can, in the chat. Very interesting to look at the table. And they actually divided up their California samples into NorCal ones that they got in and around the Bay Area to ones that they got in and around San Diego. But equally, both of them show a large number of samples that are outside that 20% variance. The variants are more like around 35 to 40, even as high as 50%. 50% variance would mean that what is reported as 20% on the label is actually only 10%. So that's pretty significant economically if you think about it. So that's my story today. A little bit of science, a little bit of chromatography. We got problems in the testing labs, but until we get a uniform set of testing standards across the country, we're going to continue to see this variation between samples sent to different labs. That's my story today from the High at 9 News desk here on the shores of Lake Champlain. I'd love to hear what you guys all have to say about this craziness in testing that we're seeing.
Thank you for this lesson for all of us, Dr. Mark. And I don't think I could agree with you more.
Mm-hmm.
We need standardization across the board. California is trying to do that, and I hope we have a national effort to just have one standard across the board to make sure that these tests come out proper. And it's funny that they standardized, or they say they're standardizing stuff here in California now, and taxation is down 20%.
Mm-hmm.
Tax revenues are down 20% now here in California so far over the last year. Now that they're standardizing, think it's a coincidence?
No,
hey, Mark, great presentation, but I have I think this is a case of too much information. I've had people tell me they have a greater effect with a 16% THC than a 25% THC. So we're really fighting ourselves to precisely determine how much THC is in the product and basing our economy on it. But it's not important. I mean, we could easily just report type 1, type 2, type 3, and not get into the minutia of you've got 32% versus 28% THC in there. Right. I agree with standardization. Right. But I have another question. Is the gas chromatography with flame ionization, does that also detect the acids as well as the neutrals?
It does not. It only tests decarboxylated cannabinoids, because when you inject that sample that you made after you've taken the solvent and you've washed all the cannabinoids off the bud, and now you're going to inject that into the machine, you put that into something called the injection port of the GC, and that's heated in most conditions to somewhere around 200 to 250 degrees centigrade. So immediately that will decarboxylate any cannabinoid acids, which is one of the sort of limitations of using gas chromatography, is you're only going to be looking at, the extract after it's been heated up. and that heating up does cause the decarboxylation. So that's a really good point, John. And I guess one of the other issues is that, you know, when you're doing, well, if you're looking at, especially if you're trying to look at hemp, you know, so one of the things that people were sending to me were they were sending me COAs that had hemp that had D9 on it, but it didn't have D9 THCA. So D9, yeah, you wouldn't be able to determine in a gas chromatography measurement whether your stuff is just being sprayed with distillate. But in a HPLC, you'd be able to see the THCA versus the THC. And so we were seeing this big spike in THC, and that's obviously what people are doing is they're spraying THC onto their flower material to move up their THC number. And that you could differentiate on an HPLC, but not on a GC. So the GC is just going to give you the decarboxylated result. So that's a really good point to bring up, John.
And we're not even talking about sampling problems. You can sample your flowers.
Oh, hold on. I was going to go into that. Dr. T, because that's my big question I have. Okay, so we're saying that this is all stuff that they tested at the University of Mississippi in their lab, correct? Dr. Mark,
and it was seized by law enforcement.
Hold on, I'm going right into that. It was all seized. It was all seized by law enforcement. Did they say what agencies seized these products? Because if it was all product that was seized from law enforcement in California versus was it all seized product from law enforcement in Mississippi? Because there could be a whole big variable. It could be a whole bunch of just regular trap product, and of course the numbers are going to be off on all of those products. And so, was this by actual licensed products that were seized?
Who's to say what happened in between that transit from California to Mississippi?
We haven't even got that far yet. We haven't even got that far. This all could have been weed from Oklahoma, Rico.
Or Jason, where I thought you were going with this, and the reason why I brought up the distinction is it could just be sprayed hemp flower.
It could be.
Because they're decarboxylating, we don't know if it's THCA that was from the flower, or did somebody spray it with cheap ass.
Oh, wouldn't that be the best one for like trappers to start doing? Oh my God, that's the biggest come up right there. You start selling THCA flower as real flower in your bags, right? But it's just Jason, cheaper THCA flower.
What Jake was telling me was that the big push for isolate out in Cali is that they're dusting pre-rolls with it, right? So check this out. Yeah. So they're adding THCA.
It's so gross.
Marginal boof.
It's so
right?
gross.
That was probably hemp, right?
Oh man, I think most of it's old outdoor weed. Most of it.
So that's probably outdoor weed that was boof, but it could be
and
hemp.
Old.
But when you add the THCA powder to those pre-rolls, now if you test those pre-rolls, the machine doesn't know where that THCA came from.
Exactly.
It could be from a trichome.
Yep.
Or it could be from the powdered, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
very true. Man,
somebody in the chat road sprayed grass clippings.
I mean, they could.
Yeah, shout out to Nick Bradley. We were talking about that this week.
Dusted grass clippings, dusted in THCA.
Grass clippings and intersected with THC isolate, you got smokable flower, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, very true, you guys.
Blowing my mind over here, Dr. Mark.
Yeah. After all that, we're gonna go. We're gonna go to a commercial. We're gonna be right back. Get ready for the 20-year anniversary celebration of the Emerald Cup. The Emerald Cup will be held at the Henry J. Kaiser Center for the Arts in downtown Oakland, May 4th and 5th. Get your tickets now for best pricing. Cannabis categories include flower, pre-rolls, solventless concentrates, solvent concentrates, cartridges, edibles, topicals, tinctures, and alternative cannabinoids. So enter early for your chance to be a winner at the 20-year anniversary Emerald Cup competition. A little longer.
Come on.
Yeah, we're gonna go through as fast. We just have so many bright minds on, Rico. You know what I mean? And this is some crazy news, you guys. All right.
What you got?
All right. A former White House chief seeks to inform people of potential risks of marijuana use. And just a warning, this is a big prohibitionist piece, and that's why I can't wait to hear what the doctors have to say about all of this. Every day, as chief of the emergency department at her hospital in San Diego, Renette Lev sees the consequences of marijuana in many of her patients. Lev talked Wednesday in Memorial Union at the University of Missouri in the inaugural Three Deans lecture, referring to the School of Medicine, Sinclair School of Nursing, and College of Health Sciences. Lev, chief medical officer of the White House National Drug Control Policy from 2018 to 2020, gave a talk titled, "It's Just Pot. What's the Problem?" There are many, it turns out, she says. She said she's no marijuana prohibitionist, but in quotes, she says, "If you're going to be a user, you need to be informed," Lev said. "You need to know the risks." The information isn't easily available, she said, and talk of marijuana was discouraged in the Trump administration, she said. In quotes, "When I was at the White House, it was the M word," Lev said. "It was too political." One often hears that marijuana isn't addictive, but it isn't true, Lev said. Marijuana is addicting like any other drug, Lev said. Speaking to reporters after the talk, she said the formal term is cannabis use disorder, but it's an addiction, she says. Patients in her emergency department are in denial when they insist they're not addicted and can quit anytime, she said. Withdrawal resembles the experience one has when stopping smoking, she said during the talk. In quotes, "If there's an addiction, there's also withdrawal," Lev said. Lev probably is most well known for inventing the term scromiting, simultaneously screaming and vomiting, which she said is a symptom among chronic marijuana users called cannabis hyperemesis syndrome, she says. In quote, she says, "The people are miserable," Lev said. "It's all from marijuana. All the products on the market are high potency," Lev said. A 1-gram joint in 1990 produced a 50 milligram dose of THC, while a 1-gram joint today contains 200 milligrams of THC. Cannabis-induced psychosis affects many patients, she said. And in quotes, "There is a risk factor for psychosis," she said. She used the example of a user who committed suicide. There was also a 4-year-old who ate her mom's marijuana gummy bear. With pediatric poisoning, they're getting into their parents' stash, Lev said. The child recovered after several days, she said. She told parents to lock up their marijuana, and in a reverse situation, there was a grandson who gave her grandfather a marijuana brownie, causing the grandfather to fall asleep and not wake up for days. The grandfather was taken into the hospital, but the marijuana had to work its way out of the system. Marijuana damages one's cardiovascular system, especially if it's smoked, she said. That marijuana helps with all seizures is false, Lev said, and there's a lack of research related to pain relief or as a substitute for prescriptions. It inhibits brain development in adolescence, she said, and what is termed medical marijuana is just marijuana, she said, in quotes. "I think it's an insult to our profession to call it medical," Lev said. Impaired driving is another overlooked issue, she said. One needs to wait 4.5 hours after smoking marijuana or 8 hours after an edible before getting behind the wheel. She asked the audience its guess on the social norm related to percentage of 18 to 45-year-olds who don't use marijuana. Most shouted the correct answer, 75%. In quotes, "We need to really promote that social norm," Lev said. "You want to empower those people." Lev is a host of a podcast, High Truths on Drugs and Addiction, and emergency room visits related to marijuana use aren't an everyday occurrence, but they have increased at MU Hospital since legalization of marijuana, said Christopher Sampson, emergency department physician. With adults, it's often first-time users who seek medical attention, he said. Children do sometimes ingest their parents' marijuana. Those those children become adulterated and less responsive, he said. Psychosis caused by marijuana is rare, Sampson said, and he agreed it's accurate to consider marijuana addictive. He says any substance can be addicting, Sampson said. Well, I can't wait to hear what you doctors have to say about all of this propaganda. Man, oh man, this lady.
It's coming from Trump. It's coming from the Trump administration, Jason.
That doesn't mean anything, bro. That doesn't mean anything.
It means a lot.
No, it doesn't.
It means a lot. He put the best people around him. The best. Only the best people around him.
He did not put the best people around him. That's been very evident from the beginning. Okay, that we all know that not to be the case. He put
your man's words.
Oh God, here we go.
Yeah, I mean, to say that any substance can be addictive, to say it's addictive doesn't really say much.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the question is, what kind of harm does it do? And if this person is an emergency room physician, let's talk about the alcohol use that you find, that you feel okay, that it's being accessible out there. And let's talk about the damages from alcohol compared to cannabis in your emergency room.
Yeah.
Focus on the things that are damaging the community rather than not damaging or, minimally damaging the community.
Mm-hmm. I mean, here's the other question is I don't buy the fact that cannabis is addictive. I think that there's certain parts of you can have like oral fixation and things like that, but I don't think that it has addictive properties in that. And the fact that they say that if you are addicted that you get cannabis hypermesis syndrome, I just find to be just another crazy misnomer. And what do you guys think about that?
I don't want to discount anybody with CHS, but
they're saying it's a side effect of addiction of cannabis.
I know. This is what I'm saying. I don't want to discredit anybody with CHS, but for this doctor to be putting this out there and presenting it as she is, that's just a bunch of BS.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to make sure we counter stuff like this with 10 times the proper information from a non-biased standpoint, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna have more and more of this. The more we see especially coming from, and this is not a shot at you, Jason. So hold this. But
there we go.
We're gonna see more and more of this prohibitionist stuff coming from the right, as Joe Biden and his campaign lean in toward more pro-cannabis rhetoric. It's going to happen.
It's actually more prohibitionist rhetoric with lipstick on it.
Well, this is coming from the right wing. It's coming from conservatives.
Oh no, I'm talking about the stuff that Joe Biden talks about. It's prohibitionist rhetoric with lipstick on it. That's what I was saying.
Okay.
Can't put lipstick on a pig, can you?
You can, 100%, bro, 100%. 100%.
To be honest, though, Jason, we've talked about it before. It's just lip service from both sides, until they really talk about, kind of like what Dr. T and I have been talking about, which is that, cannabis is not dangerous. It needs to be removed from the Controlled Dangerous Substance Act. I mean, Sour Patch Kids are addictive, okay? I mean, right? I mean, Dr. T, doesn't sugar and in general the weight that diabetes has had on our health care system is almost like a night and day thing compared with like the dangers of cannabis. Why don't they start talking about the dangers of sucrose, right? And the dangers of all these artificial flavors and colors that we shouldn't be eating. I mean, what's addictive here? Right?
Well, addictive is not related to the substance. It's the person, not the substance. I can find two people, one person using a particular substance at the same level to another. One person's addicted and the other person's not. It's the person's habits and the results from that habit. So by pointing to the actual substance and saying that's addictive, it's wrong. It's a misunderstanding of addiction.
Right, but there is certainly the reward, the dopamine kind of reward that you get, like when you have that piece of chocolate or you have that sweet.
I thought it's called
candy,
relaxation,
right?
Dr. Mark.
a reward similar to the reward that a meth user or cocaine user would have, right? I mean, they're rewarding themselves. They feel good about it, right? So isn't there a similar neurological mechanism in the brain that whether it's an addiction or I don't know, like a craving, like
But
it's the same kind of thing with tobacco, right?
It's not well associated with dosage. It's not well associated with substance. It's associated with the individual and their behavior around the substance. Yeah, there is a dopamine reward system. That reward system can happen with any activity. I've seen a post-mortem on a guy who drank too much milk. He had calcium deposits all throughout his body. And he was dead from, milk, it does a body good, but this time it didn't do a body good, but it was his psychological makeup that he went overboard with it.
I know one thing.
You feel good after consuming something, whether it's a drug or whether it's a food, is it the same fundamental mechanism in the brain? I mean, like, so the dopamine system is different than the endocannabinoid system, and so certainly they have to be related in a way, because if you consume cannabis and you feel like you've been rewarded, it's acting on your CB1, but is there also sort of a peripheral effect it has on your dopaminergic system as well?
Yeah, the dopamine reward system happens with behaviors as well as with substances. Yeah, absolutely. So it's a separate system. It's related to the endocannabinoid system, absolutely. Mm-hmm. But, it's a reward system. And what we find is that THC will trigger it and CBD will not. CBD will actually counteract it. And so there's differences between the active ingredients in the plants as well.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I know one thing. Whenever I'm at a party and somebody starts laying down them white lines, I reach into my pocket and grab a Snickers bar, and I'm on that same level as them.
Oh boy! Oh boy!
Tell you that much.
Interesting.
Tell you that much.
You know a lot of people that snort THCA, huh? Interesting. Are you sure it's not cannabis?
Grass clippings. All right, you got this quick last one, Jason?
Yeah. But I do want to send a big thank you to Leah Patrick for her big super chat, and also to Miggy 420 for another super chat as well. So big thank you to both of you guys. And
thank you, Leah.
Yes. And so Adam, in the sake of time, let's just play the video, because the video tells basically most of the story. Let's just play the video.
5 more proposed regulations to help sick Kentuckians. Those requirements are spelling out who would qualify for medical marijuana before it becomes official. Focus investigator John Charlton explains the application process and how much it'll cost.
I'm pleased to report my administration filed another 5 regulations.
That brings the total now up to 15 proposed regulations ahead of Kentucky's medical marijuana program, officially starting on the first of the year next year.
These new regulations establish how Kentuckians can become cardholders.
Applications will be done online, and the portal will go live on January 1st. Applicants must be Kentucky residents, must provide written certification from their doctor that they have at least one of the qualifying conditions, such as cancer, PTSD, or epilepsy, and must upload a notarized signature page.
Additional documentation, as the governor mentioned, will be required for designated caregivers, minor patients, and visiting patients.
Sick and qualifying Kentuckians now also know how much it'll cost to get an official medical marijuana card, as well as the annual renewal fee.
Those are set at $25, which is one of the lowest application fees for a purely medical program in the country.
The cards, after the application is processed and approved, will be emailed and can be printed out or saved on a smartphone or computer. Cards will include aspects to help prevent counterfeiting.
The features include a QR code for law enforcement that can verify the validity of a card if necessary, as well as a barcode for dispensaries to scan when presented with the card and a second form of government-issued identification at the point of sale.
Cardholders will be able to buy up to 4 ounces of medical marijuana in raw plant material per month. However, as we've reported, folks shouldn't expect that there will be cannabis available on day one. The earliest to grow it will be January 1st. John Charlton, WHAS 11, on your side.
Well, Kentucky. They're starting off with getting people to be able to get their medical cards. $25, Dr. T. That's a great price for that.
It is. Yeah.
Absolutely. Wait, $25? That's what it used to be back in the day in Prop 215, right?
Well,
you can go to San Francisco Department of Public Health and get your card for $25.
Yeah, I think in the early years it was about that, and then as soon as we did SB 420 and the state card, it jumped up to $100.
Yeah.
What do y'all think about that 4 ounces per month?
I mean, first of all, they're not even going to be able to get that because they're not going to be able to even start with this until January, and then they're only going to be able to start growing then.
Wait. So we all know that Kentucky has been a big hemp growing state in the last several years, right?
Yep. Mitch McConnell,
processing. Yeah. So this is just going to be like a flip of the switch, right?
Don't forget,
right?
No, don't forget they got the cornbread mafia out there too.
Cornbread mafia, bluegrass.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. And,
bro, is blue going to be the new color for the next variation of weed?
Ooh, spray it.
Everybody wants
Heisenberg's diamonds.
Yeah, everybody wants purple right now.
Biden's blue.
Yep. That's
Biden bluegrass.
Oh man, that's actually a pretty good name for a strain.
No, this is a step in the right direction. I don't know. Jason is all about positive steps in the right direction when it's coming from conservatives. So I don't know if you'll
Governor Beshears is a Democrat. First of all, Governor Beshears is Democrat.
But wasn't Kentucky the regulation where the governor said it's okay to go to the neighboring states?
He did say that.
Go buy weed.
He did say that. He did say that.
Kentucky, right?
He did say that.
So Jason, don't you think that people have been muling weed into Kentucky for this day one?
Well, I think people have been. Yeah. Well, they're 100% going to have to wait because they're gonna implement some like metric based type of system that's going to do track and trace, seed to sale, because they think it's you know what I mean. It's the way that it has to
there's
be.
There's ways that they can cheat that.
We know we all know that, but we're not here to that's not the topic of the story.
Yeah, we shouldn't be promoting that. Right?
Yes, we can't. Yeah, we're trying to promote good operations, good operators. You know what I mean. And less government overreach and all that.
I know way too much about this Kentucky hot hemp.
You know about this, all this THCA flower in Kentucky? Yeah.
Well, that note, thank you all for joining us for yet another episode and another week of High Nine News, where on Fridays we have the most cerebral conversations of all. But you can catch us live every weekday, 9 a.m. Pacific, high noon on the East Coast. Big shout out to our super fan show and love getting the comments posted live on the big screen. Pharmacist, Miggy 420, and the big one from Leah Patrick today. Thank you all so much for the love shown. And to the rest of the live audience and online supporters catching us across all media platforms, tuning in each day to the headlines of chaos, also known as developing cannabis industry, thank you too. To our vetted correspondent team tuning in from all over, bringing us much needed variety of perspective and your respected opinions to the table, thank you. Our production team, Cloud Media Partners, all the sponsors keeping the lights on, and AV struggles to a minimum. Adam back there with the remote control.
Yeah,
today.
He's remote, bro, today.
So we can feather freely in a Jason-free environment.
Yes. And shout out to my friends over at Xscape who helped us figure out this technology solution.
Yeah, big shout out to Xscape. Had some great music back in the 90s. Atlanta bred and Atlanta born. And
that
always
was Escape,
Cannabis Sativa L, the reason we show up to read these stories. every single day. Thank you, too. It has been March 14th, 2024. The show is over. Hope you've been blessed with the top industry headlines of the day. Hope it's enough for you to put in your pipe and smoke at least until Monday. My name is Rico Lamitte, the dopest dad on the street. High 9 News, cannabis industry's #1 daily news show. And today we're going to give it to Dr. T, Dr. Jean Talleyrand. What you got for us? Can you leave us with a good message for the weekend?
Thank you, guys. Enjoy your weekend. Avoid any sprayed Kentucky bluegrass. Just grow the plant in your backyard. Have a good one.